when she shows, along with the other ethnologists, that the persistence of a segmentary organisation requires paradoxically that its mechanism be ineffectual enough so that fear remains the motor of the whole. And what is this fear? It would appear that social formations experienced a morbid and mournful foreboding of things to come, though what comes to them always comes from within, rushing in through the opening. Perhaps it is even for this reason that it arrives from without. This suffocates in a potentiality at the cost of their dysfunction that constitute an integral part of the functioning of their system. The segmentary Turing machine makes use of schism to exercise fusion and impedes the concentration of power by maintaining the organs of chieftainry in a relationship of impotence with the group, as though the savages themselves sense the rise of the imperial barbarian, who will come nonetheless from without and will overcode all their codes. But the greatest danger would be yet another dispersion, a schism through which all the possibilities of coding would be suppressed, decoded flows flowing in a blight, mute, deteriorated socius, which is the nightmare that the primitive social machine exercises with all its forces and all its segmentary articulations. The primitive machine is not ignorant of exchange, commerce, and industry. It exercises them, localizes them, cordons them off, and casts them, and maintains the merchant and the blacksmith in a subordinate position, so that the flows in production do not manage to break the codes in favour of their abstract or functional qualities. And isn't that what Oedipus, or the fear of incest, is about? The fear of a decoded flow. If capitalism is the universal truth, it is so in the sense that makes capitalism the negative of all social formations. It is the thing, the unnameable, the generalised decoding of flows that reveal the contrario, the secret of all these formations, coding the flows and even overcoding them rather than letting them anything escape coding. Primitive societies are not outside history, rather it is capitalism that is the end of history. It is capitalism that results from a long history of contingencies and accidents, and that which brings on this end. It cannot be said that the previous formations did not oversee this thing that only came from without by rising from within, and that all the costs had to prevent from rising. Whence the possibility of a retrospective reading of all history in terms of capitalism. It is already possible to see signs of classes in pre-capitalist societies, but ethnologists observe how difficult it is to distinguish these proto-classes from the castes organised by the imperial machine and from the rankings distributed by a segmentary primitive machine. The criteria that distinguishes classes, castes and ranks must not be sought in a fixity or permeability, nor in a relative closing or opening. These criteria always reveal themselves to be deceptive, eminently misleading, but the ranks are inseparable from the primitive territorial coding process, just as castes are inseparable from the overcoding practices by the imperial state. While classes are relative to the process of an industrial and commonly production decoded under conditions of capitalism, all history can therefore be read as signs of the classes by observing the rules set forth by Marx and bearing in mind that classes are negative of castes and ranks. For it is certain that the regime of decoding does not signify the absence of organisation, but rather the most sombre organisation, the harshest compatibility with the axiomatic, replacing the codes and incorporating, always a contrario. Problem of Oedipus. The full body of the earth is not without distinguishing characteristics. Suffering and dangerous, unique, universal. It falls back on production and the agents and connections of production. But on it too, everything is attached and inscribed, everything is attached, merely calculated. It is the basis of the disjunctive synthesis and its reproduction, a pure force of filiation or genealogy. Newman. The full body is the ungendered, but filiation is the first character of inscription marked on this body, and we know the nature of this intensive filiation. This inclusive disjunction where everything strives but into itself, and where the same being is everywhere on every side at every level, differing only in intensity. The same included being traverses into visible distances in the full body, and passes through all the singularities, all the intensities of syntheses that shifts and reproduces itself. It serves no purpose to recall that genealogical filiation is social rather than biological, where it is necessarily biosocial in as much as it is inscribed on the cosmic egg of the full body of the earth. It has a mythical origin that is the one, or rather the primitive one too. Should one say the twins of the twin, which divides and unites into itself, the nomo or the nomos? The distinctive syntheses distributes the primordial ancestors, but each member of the primitive community is himself a complete full body, male and female, binding into itself all the partial objects with variations that are solely intensive or that correspond to the internal zigzag of the Dogon egg. Each one intensely repeats the entire genealogy for himself, and everywhere is the same at both ends of the individual distance on every side, a litany of twins in intense filiation. At the beginning of Le René de Pala, Marcel Grel and Germaine Dieterlen sketch out a splendid theory of the sign. The signs of filiation, guide signs, and master signs, signs of desire, intensiveness at first, which fall in a spiral and traverse a series of explosions before extending into figures, images, figures, and drawings. It is the full body back. If the full body backs on the productive connections and describes them in a network of intensive and inclusive disjunction, it still has to find again and reanimate lateral connections in the network itself, and must attribute them to itself as if they were the cause, as though it were the cause. These are the only two aspects of the full body: enchanted surface of inscription, fantastic law, the apparent objective movement, but also a magical agent or fetish, the quasi-cause. It is not content to inscribe all things, it must act as if it produced them. It is necessary that connections reappear in a form compatible with the inscribed disjunctions, even if they react in the form of these disjunctions. Such is alliance. The second characteristic of inscription. Alliance imposes on the productive connections the extensive form of pairing of persons compatible with the disjunctions of inscription, but inversely reacts on inscription by determining an inclusive and restrictive use of these same disjunctions. It is therefore that alliance be mythically represented as supervening at a certain moment in the filiative lives, though in another sense it was already there from time immemorial. Marcel Gruel describes how among the Dogons something is produced at a certain moment at the level and on the side of the eighth ancestor. The derailment of the disjunctions will cease to be inclusive and become exclusive. Once this occurs, there is a disembowelling of the full body, a cancelling of twinness, legitimacy, a separation of the sexes marked by circumcision, but also a recomposition of the body according to a new model of connection or conjunction. An articulation of bodies formed between themselves, the lateral inscription of articulating stones of alliance, in short, a whole arc of alliance. Alliance is never derived from filiations, nor can they be deduced from them. But this principle, once established, you must distinguish between 2 points of view: the one economic and political, where alliance is there from time immemorial, combining and declining itself with the extended filiative lineages that do exist prior to alliances in the system assumed to be given an extended form; the other mythical, which shows how the extension of a system takes form and delimits itself, proceeding from intense and primordial filiative lineages that necessarily lose their inclusive or non-restrictive use. From this viewpoint, the extended system is like a memory of alliance and of words, implying an active repression of the intense memory of filiation. For if genealogy and filiation is the object of an ever-vigilant memory, it is a degree that they are already apprehended in an extensive sense that they certainly did not possess before the determinations of alliances conferred it to them. On the contrary, as intensive filiations, they become the object of a separate memory, nocturnal and biocosmic. The memory that must suffer repression of the new extended memory to be established. We can better understand why the problem does not in the least consist of going from filiations to alliances, or of deducting the latter from the former. The problem is one of passing from an intensive energetic order to an extensive system, which comprises both qualitative alliances and extended filiations. Nothing is changed by the fact that the primary energy of the intensive order, the Newman, is an energy of filiation. For this intensive filiation is not yet extended and does not as yet comprise any distinction of person, nor even a distinction of sexes, but only pre-personal variations in intensity taking on the same twinness or bisexuality in differing degrees. The signs belong in this order are therefore fundamentally neutral or ambiguous, according to an expression employed by Leibniz to designate a sign that can be plus as well as minus. It is a question of knowing how, starting from this primary intensity, it will be possible to pass into a system in extension where the filiations will be filiations extended in the form of lineages, comprising distinctions of persons and of parental appellations. The alliances will be at the same time qualitative relations, which the filiations presuppose as much as vice versa. In short, the ambiguous intent signs will cease to be ambiguous and will become positive or negative. This may be seen clearly in a passage from Levi-Strauss explaining how the simple forms of marriage, the prohibition of parallel cousins, and the appropriation of cross cousins. Each marriage is between two lines A, B, bears a plus or a negative sign, according to whether this couple results from women being lost to or acquired by line A, B. In this regard, it's most important whether the regime of filiation is patrilineal or matrilineal. In a patrilineal or patrilocal regime, for example, related women are women lost. Women brought in by marriage are women gained. Each family descended from those marriages thus bears a sign which is determined by the initial group, or whether the children's mother is a daughter or a mother-in-law. The sign changes in passing from the brother to the system, since the brother gains a wife or the sister is lost to a family. But as Levi-Strauss remarks, one also changes signs in passing from one generation to the next. It depends upon whether from the initial group's point of view the father has received a wife or the mother has been transferred outside, whether the sons have the right to a woman or a sister. Certainly in real life this difference does not mean that half the male cousins are designed to remain bachelors. However, at all events it has expressed the law that a man cannot receive a wife except from the group from which a woman can be claimed, because in the previous generation a sister or daughter was lost, while a brother owes a sister or a father or daughter to the outside world for a woman is gained from the previous generation. The pivot couple formed by an A man married to a B woman obviously has two sons according to whether it envisioned from the viewpoint of A to that of A, B, and then the same is true for children. It is now necessary to look at the cousins generation to establish that all those in the relationship plus plus or minus minus are parallel to one now, while those in the relationship plus minus or minus plus are cross. Once the problem is put in this way, it's less a question of applying a logical combinative apparatus governing an interplay of exchanges, as Levi-Strauss would have it, than one of establishing a physical system that would express itself naturally in terms of debts. It seems to be very significant that Levi-Strauss himself invokes the coordinates of a physical system, though he sees this as nothing more than a metaphor. In the physical system in extension, something passes through that is of the nature of an energy flow, plus, minus, or minus, plus. Something does not pass or remain blocked, plus, plus, or minus, minus. And something blocks or on the contrary causes passage. Something or someone in the system in extension there is no primary filiation, nor is there a first generation or an initial exchange, but there always an already alliances at the same time as the filiation is extended, expressing both what may blocked in the filiation and what must pass through in the alliance. The essential is not that the signs change according to the sexes in the generation, but that one passes from the extensive to the extensive. That is to say, from an order of an ambiguous sign to an order of signs that are changeable but determined. And it's here that resorting to myth is indispensable, not because the myth would be transposed, or even an inverse representation of real relations in extension, because only the myth can determine the intensive conditions of the system of production included, in conformity with indigenous thought and practice. That's why a text of Michael Greel's, which looks to myth for a principle that would explain the avunculate, seems indecisive to us, and seems to avoid the reproach of idealism that usually greets this kind of attempt. We have a similar view of the recent article in which Adler and Cartry returns to this question. That's it. That's as far as I can get without without completely just switching off. So yeah, that's me reading as much as energy as I have read with Deleuze, Capitalism and Schizophrenia. It is an interesting book. It's incredibly postmodern, so it's really it can get very, 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 very deep, and it can get very self-referential as well, which is interesting, but it's very much one you can only really dip in. I mean, it's not even that thick a book, but it's as you can tell, there's like a lot of elaborate use of language, a lot of it's quite a hard one. It's like a puzzle box, really. I see it as. I mean, I've read most of it. As you can tell, it's I've pretty much never got to the end of it, but I've got more or less most of the time I've read it. Well, more or less got to the end of it before. I think I've got just past the part I was just reading for, which is Savages, Barbarians, Civilized Men, which primarily deals with the nature of fascism, or desire for fascism in human beings, i.e. the desire to be controlled. Now, the only reason I'm posting this is to demonstrate that there are ideas in there about, or ideas in general out there about what fascism is from a more modern contemporary perspective, in terms of like postmodern theory, I suppose. Now, postmodernism I have a very mixed relationship with. Postmodernism in philosophical terms I mostly find frustration with, that I'm probing deeper to kind of like dig into it more, read more. Foucault I've not really read much of, I've just like seen a few videos of like articulations of what his thought were. But regardless of all that, I just thought I'd read, see how far I could get as a kind of like thought experiment, see how far I could get through Anti-Oedipus in one take. So I doubt you've enjoyed that, but I thought I'd just post it up because obviously we've got in the world in general, there's like a fascism still is like a dead end ideology as it always was, but frankly, you kind of have like some of those ideas brewing over in America, and it's always kind of, and world over with the alt-right and everything else. So I just thought I'd do something which is read something which is an extract from a book which deals with that question. It deals with a lot of questions actually. It's a very, let me just read some in the back. Essential critical theory, text for feminists, literary theorists, social scientists, philosophers, problems of Western culture, contemporary. So this was written in the, I think it's the 70s, so it's still relatively contemporary, though obviously not so much. It is worth a read, but it's very hard. It's hard going. I'll say that much. It deals a lot with abstract imagery and abstract concept. The body without organs is still one which is just a mindfuck. Anyway, this is like almost an hour long now, so I will leave this as it is. I've been Noir Vortex. This has been a reading of Anti-Oedipus, and in a bit.